suggesting perhaps modern psychology, like a modern person, is full of resistance and denial of limitation.
Often, all too often, and what will be left, 100 years from now of present-day psychology that people can look back on and say, boy, they made some real contributions, something really valuable that helped create a more peaceful, humane world. Will they? Or will they say, well, they published a lot of research and they did some torturing, but other than that, we're not quite sure what 21st century psychology really was all about. It'd be nice to think that there is really a contribution, a legacy that will endure. What that would consist of, I'm not sure. That'd be an interesting research study to ask contemporary psychologists of different age brackets, what do you see as the most meaningful, whatever meaningful means, profound or human affirmative aspects of psychology, what psychology is doing today, that will endure and be valued and enriching for human beings 50 years from now, 100 years from now. That would be a nice piece of research. And then, of course, you could do long-range follow-up, see, well, what in 25, 50 or more years, what is psychology and what parts of today's psychology did develop and grow and endure and enrich civilization. I, as a psychotherapist and as an existential humanistic psychotherapist, would like to think that that discipline and body of knowledge and method, that endured and contributed to the long-range development. And that's why, as Rogers and Maslow and Rollo got older and then died, it fell to lesser people like myself to try to continue that tradition and to salvage, to treasure, to promulgate their concepts, their value systems, their words, which is why I accepted being editor of the Journal of Humanistic Psychology. If someone had told me I was going to do it for 35 years, I'm not sure I would have done it. But I did it. So I remember sometimes people would say, why don't you do this or that or something? And I'd say, well, when I edit the journal, I'm always thinking, particularly of Abe Maslow, but also Rollo and other Carl Rogers, that I'm doing it for them. I'm thinking, what do they want in this journal? I'm also trying to think of what do present day readers, students, and others want, but in a sense saying, well, they may not know what is the most important part, and it's part of my job as a journal editor to sift and then to present what seems valuable. And I don't keep up closely with the psychotherapy research movement today, but people like Art Bohart and others do. And I'm very pleased, very impressed that they keep looking at what really works in psychotherapy, what's really going on. What's Les's last name? Les Greenwald or whatever. Anyway, his talk last night, I found it very meaningful. Really trying to look at what happens in psychotherapy. And this is what Rogers started out doing many, many years ago. I remember when Martin Seligman came out with Positive Psychology, and he dismissed Rogers and May as not being research-oriented or something, which was totally idiotic. I mean, he was just flat stupid and wrong and disrespectful. I mean, Rogers invented psychotherapy research. He tape-recorded psychotherapy sessions when he was accused of being unethical in doing that, and yet he persisted and launched that. And now we see all this psychotherapy research based on transcripts, on sound recordings that come out of that tradition. So that's a tradition that seemed really important. And Maslow also with his hierarchy of needs and looking at what really matters to people, what keeps them going. Even if you're trapped in some concentration camp or trapped in a Dutch attic like Anne Frank was, what do you do to create meaning that might endure and last and be of benefit to others? I was recently in Vienna, and a friend and colleague there, Harold Morey, took me to Frankl's grave. He had worked with Frankl a great deal. And it was very meaningful to me to to actually be at the grave of Viktor Frankl and to reflect on what he contributed. Now, if you were to ask a whole big sample of psychology professors and graduate students, you know, who was Viktor Frankl and what contribution did he make to psychology, it'd be interesting to see the answers. I'm sure quite a few people would know, but I fear and suspect that many would not know. And that would, if that's true, that would be quite tragic, because to me he was one of the giant figures of creating meaning in the face of absurdity or atrocity and so forth. And thus a major contributor to the existential tradition that Rollo May in this country picked up. So it'd be interesting to survey a group of students and professors of psychology, therapists too. You know, what are the major figures who contributed depth of meaning and value to the field of psychology? I personally I would include Freud. There's obviously a lot of criticisms of Freud, but I was trained in Freudian psychoanalytic psychology and still value it very highly. And in his books like Civilization and Its Discontents, you know, he was addressing these profound problems of how do you create and sustain a civilization? And there he was in a place where it was being destroyed right around him, and he narrowly escaped from that. And you could argue that we're at a similar precipice now, you know, this country and the world. Do we try to get together, with the help of psychologists, we might hope, to create some kind of meaning and comradeship, or do we just do Mickey Mouse research and get grants and sell drugs to people and